We seek harm to none and harmony for all. Let the globe, if nothing else, say this is true. That even as we grieved, we grew. That even as we hurt, we hoped. That even as...
Amanda Gorman's poem, The Hill We Climb, is going viral for a reason. Oprah tweeted about it, so did Manuel, and so many others. The headline circulating is that it captures the moment. Yes, and so much more. In case you missed it, Gorman is the youngest ever poet laureate and gave this recitation at the inauguration Wednesday, the 20th. It is really good. And as someone who just wants to let this poem live in the air just a little bit longer, I want to take time to look at the themes and the writing choices she made to see just a bit of what makes it so amazing.
Why this message today? How did you go about crafting this?
Right. Well, I did a lot of research ever since I found out in late December that I was going to be the inaugural poet. So that was making sure I read all of the previous inaugural poems, really doing a deep literature dive of other orators who I look up to, whether it be Frederick Douglass and Abraham Lincoln and how they speak to a nation that can feel very divided. And I was around halfway through that process and kind of that research when the January 6th insurrection happened at the Capitol.
We'll get to the Capitol riots in the part that she does when we get to the poem. For now, in a very internet-ish title list, here are 10 hidden connections, hidden references in The Hill We Climb. And I guess as a caveat, I'm going to say alludes to and references. I don't know that these are the author's intentions, nor am I trying to say that this is the right reading of the poem. Part of what makes art meaningful is that it can mean different things to different people. Feel free to add yours in the comments. I'm Charlie. This is That Makes Sense to Me. Let's get started with Dr. King. Carved in the actual stone at the Dr. King Memorial on the other side of the National Mall is true peace is not merely the absence of tension. It is the presence of justice. I also think it's possible to see this particular line as a callback to one of the slogans of the Black Lives Matter protests across the country, as was chanted in the streets of Ferguson: no justice, no peace. Number 2.
But that doesn't mean we are striving to form a union that is perfect.
This, of course, is a reference to the opening lines of the Constitution in order to form a more perfect union. It's one of the more recurring themes in the poem. We are in progress. We are not there yet. Number 3 is probably the only reference that got stuck in your head, as verified by her tweeting at him. This is Hamilton reference number 1.
Like the scripture says, everyone shall sit under their own vine and fig tree.
I can't play the audio without getting a copyright strike. Patreon.com if you're interested in supporting this channel. But this is more than just referencing the musical. If the line is actually from the song One Last Time, if you know the play, you'll recognize that this is the moment George Washington decides he needs to step down. Hamilton says, "Why do you have to say goodbye, Washington? If I say goodbye, the nation learns to move on. It outlives me when I'm gone." Washington was prescient enough to know that America needs a transition of power. He taught it to us by stepping down when the time was right.
Then victory won't lie in the blade, but in all the bridges we've made. That is the promised glade, the
Number
hill
4,
we
The
climb,
Hill We
if
Climb.
only we
I think
dare it,
this
because
is alluding to the so-called city on a hill. This is the title, and we're going to come back to it later. Number 5.
the poem that you might have heard, which is, we've seen a force that would shatter our nation rather than share it. And I got that actually from looking through a few tweets and a lot of people being like, wow, this is what happens when people don't want to share the country.
Another thing I would say, Lester, is as we try to figure out. Well, it looks now like
this is not an intentional reference, but I found that this image brings to mind the work of a contemporary philosopher, Kate Manne, on so-called family annihilators. Some men are so small-hearted. Some men's identities are so wrapped up in their power over others that when they are shamed, when they feel their pride is unbearably marred, they would rather take life than find meaning in a new one. It feels like this video is getting long, so lightning round.
Defeated. In this truth, in this faith we trust, for while we have our eyes on the future, history has its eyes on us. This is the era of just redemption. We author a new chapter to offer hope and laughter to ourselves. So, while once we asked...
Wait. Pause the lightning round. This next one is cool.
And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country.
So, while once we asked, how could we possibly prevail over catastrophe? Now we assert, how could catastrophe possibly prevail over us?
Let's just listen to that one more time.
So, while once we asked, how could we possibly prevail over catastrophe? Now we assert, how could catastrophe possibly prevail over us?
This speech is just going down in history. I can't even put into words how amazed I am. Number 10, Abraham Lincoln.
If we merge mercy with might into might with right, then love becomes our legacy and change our children's birthright.
This is a critique of the moral nihilism of dictators, where the credo of tyranny is might makes right. Hi, editing here. I wasn't actually going to include this, but I can't avoid thinking about this particular line from Where Do We Go From Here. I'm not trained as a poet. I'm trained as an ethicist, and I want to just include this.
And one of the great problems of history is that the concepts of love and power have usually been contrasted as opposites, polar opposites. So that love is identified with a resignation of power and power with a denial of love. It was this misinterpretation that caused the philosopher Nietzsche, who was the philosopher of the will to power, to reject the Christian concept of love. Now we got to get this thing right. What is needed is a realization that power without love is reckless and abusive, and that love without power is sentimental and anemic.
I know I wasn't going to include this, but can we just stay on this for a second? Is this not the perfect critique of the rotting foundations of the recent politics of domination, the politics of the strong man? Biden didn't say his name in his address. Gorman didn't in her poem. That was probably the right choice. But isn't this a good frame? Isn't this a fitting summary for what is morally and intellectually wrong with the cult of Trump? He and his followers fail to understand that mercy is not weakness. Care is not weakness. Going out of your way to empathize with and connect with someone who has less power than you is not giving up strength. Doing anything else is to build a golden calf to either anemic sentimentalism or reckless, abusive power. We must merge mercy with might, and might with right. Also, in the background of this, literally and figuratively, is Fred Rogers. He's a paragon of this, and he's actually the next video. I've been working on it for months. Get subscribed and click the bell if you don't want to miss it. Also, comment. Everyone is very busy with a lot right now. I'll prioritize it if there are more comments asking for it. Okay, wow. Biggest unplanned tangent ever. I'm going to cut the next few references for time. Back to the video as planned. Something, Abraham Lincoln.
If we merge mercy with might into might with right, then love becomes our legacy and change our children's birthright.
There's a danger here, though, in this kind of thinking. If we're not careful, we might fall prey to the notion that the power of Amanda Gorman's words comes only from their connection to the past. We might mistakenly think that she doesn't have her own authority, but is instead leaning on or borrowing it from the founding fathers and their intellectual successors. But this is where we come back to the title, The Hill We Climb. Americans love to say we're residents of the city on a hill. This image has been invoked to convey that America is a beacon of democracy to the world. a free nation inspiring others to slough off the chains of totalitarianism. Right? This is why Gorman has captured our contemporary moment. Our flirting with fascism has showed us the fragility of our institutions. Externally, from Yemen to Korea and from Brazil to Britain, the riots wounded the international perception of America and the efficacy of our ideals by extension. And internally, the recent public witness we've all borne to the white supremacist terrorism has shed light on the reality that inequality, oppression, and violence have always been in the backdrop of our nation. Or as she says,
the hill we climb if only we dare it, because being American is more than a pride we inherit. It's the past we step into and how we repair it.
Danielle Allen writes in her book Talking to Strangers, the founders are not just the fathers, but the mothers, the brothers, the sisters, the suffragettes, the freedom riders, the abolitionists, anyone who pushes society forward as a founder. Our climb up toward the hill is a continual founding. America was never the city on the hill. It has always been the hill we climb. And that is why today felt like such a relief. We've seen a force that would shatter a nation. Forces tried to stop our climb up the hill. They failed. And in the immortal words of the national anthem, but I suppose today, Lady Gaga, days after tear gas burst through the air. It's a good day for America.
I understand you have a mantra that you say before every reading you give. Can you reveal what that is?
Certainly. I do it whenever I perform, and I definitely did it this time. And I close my eyes and I say, I am the daughter of black writers. We are descended from freedom fighters who broke their chains and changed the world. They call me.
Wow. Wow, you're awesome. I'm so transfixed.
Thanks for watching.